This is Ben Borg.
This is Katrina Borg.
This is Claire Green.
This is Maggie Morgan. And this is the More Than Macros podcast.
This episode of the More Than Macros podcast is brought to you by Married to My Macros, performance nutrition coaching. Married to My Macros is a personalized one-on-one nutrition coaching service providing the highest level of support to clients with the practical tools and accountability needed to improve health, physical performance, and body composition through diet. While this podcast will fuel your mind, let the team at Married to My Macros fuel your body.
Okay, welcome back to Ben and Kat's IVF journeys. I think we're on part 7 now. And Kat is heading into the final stretch of her pregnancy. So we thought that we'd check in and see how things are changing, what we're learning, different experiences that Kat has been going through the past little while since we last checked in, which I think was around week 20. So she's 3 weeks into her 3rd trimester now. And they just went through a big move. So there's a lot that's been happening in the lives of Ben and Kat. So it's been difficult to find a time to catch up, but I think that going into this final stretch here will be really interesting to see what kind of experiences Kat is going through, what issues she's facing, challenges she's facing. And then I guess the next time we'll catch up will be when little baby is here. So I'm really excited to learn a little bit more about what you've been going through lately, what you've been experiencing. So yeah, I guess we can just start out by, you telling us a little bit about what the past 10, 11 weeks have been like for you, any new challenges that have come up, any specific issues that you're currently facing, and we'll work through those.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the last 10, 11 weeks have been interesting. Everyone says the 2nd trimester is amazing. It's like sunshine and unicorns and you'll love it and you get your energy. The 2nd trimester was awful for me. And especially the end of the 2nd trimester. And part of that is I've got pretty bad pelvic girdle dysfunction and pain related to my pubic symphysis having really separated quite a bit right from week 13 of my pregnancy.
Can you just break that down just one step further for us?
Yeah. So essentially pelvic girdle pain is super common in pregnancy, and it's usually very treatable if you kind of get on it early. And so it's a term that can be used to describe quite varying pain. It usually originates from the sacroiliac joint or from the pubic symphysis, which is right where your two pubic bones meet in the middle. Ben is actually doing a podcast next week with an expert on this, so she's going to be able to give lots of really good information because I'm much more just my personal experience with it. But very early on in my pregnancy, about 13 weeks, my pubic symphysis started to separate a little bit. And that's normal. That has to occur in pregnancy in order to create space. But I think that my relaxin, which is the hormone that kind of makes all of your joints loosen up, peaked at quite a high level, maybe perhaps relative to the norm. That's just my kind of suspicion, because I had no bones. Everything, all of my joints were out. It's like if I rolled over in bed, it was like everything was popping, everything was coming out, everything was funking around, way more than any of my friends or clients who are pregnant kind of reported back. They had a little bit of that, but not to that degree. So super loose. And then the physio that I've been seeing had said that my glutes weren't really firing all that much. And so any kind of leg-based movements that I was doing, be it in the gym or more, the issue was I was actually better in the gym. More the issue was day-to-day stuff, that my glutes weren't really doing anything and my adductors were taking over. So when my adductors, so those, kind of muscles on your inner legs and your inner quads, when they take over, what they were doing is reefing on my pubic symphysis and pulling it apart even more. So I think that level of separation was quite significant, and that has caused extreme pain for me, right kind of down my pubic bone, in and around my vagina, my groin area. And so I've had a lot of nerve pain, a lot of pelvic instability, weakness, and I had seen a different physio early on in my pregnancy about it, right around week 13. and the diagnosis was completely missed. Like we just kind of sailed over it. And so I went on thinking, oh, this pain that I'm having and the inability to roll over in bed at 13 weeks pregnant, like that's just normal. That's just part of it. And because of COVID, I haven't been receiving any antenatal care. And so I just kind of let it go until I forget, it probably would have been right around 20 weeks. Maybe we spoke about it last time. I can't remember. It was getting really bad. And so I ended up seeing another physio and was diagnosed then. She gave me some great corrective exercises that actually did help a lot. So definitely if anyone's experiencing it, like go see a physio and go see a physio early. Cause I think if I'd been on top of it earlier, we could have potentially mitigated some of it, because at this point, while I can do those exercises to help when I have flare-ups, the pain never goes away. It's always like a constant 4 out of 10. And then every week or so I'll have a flare-up and I can't walk. Like it's to the point where I've been like, do I need a cane? The night before we moved house, our dog, who has seizures, had a seizure in the middle of the night. And our worst nightmare was always that she would go down the stairs while she was having a seizure, and it hasn't happened in a year. And of course it happened.
Oh no.
So, and it just like I heard it and I knew what it was in my sleep. And so I bolted out of bed to go try and like catch her, not even thinking about my pelvis. And it's this whole drama. Anyway, she's fine. So, but
You're fine.
I really flared up quite badly and was sort of unable to walk at that time. And so when we moved house, I actually couldn't carry anything that was more than 2 kilos. I couldn't like lift a shopping bag off the counter to put it on the floor to unpack. And that lasted for about a week and a half. And
is
so
it similar to like a lower back type of pain, or is it something that you've never experienced ever before?
I've never experienced it ever before. Some women get pelvic girdle pain in their lower back. A lot of women do. But generally that's like originating from the sacroiliac joint, from what I understand. So my experience has been all very like frontal. And it's things like walking, like spreading your legs apart really aggravates it. And it has a lot of shooting nerve pain and stuff like that. So it was a really difficult move. And essentially that was the last time I trained. So I had done a training session that day, which may or may not have contributed as well. And it's been 3 weeks since then, and I haven't been able to do anything, because even I went to repot some plants the other day and I lifted one moderately heavy pot for like 10 meters and I couldn't walk the following day. So.
And how is that impacting your overall well-being during this pregnancy, not being able to work out at this point?
Probably my biggest struggle. And I think that while this particular example is like maybe quite unique to me, I think that this is a struggle so many women go through, because Ben and I had this discussion and I was like, well, is it even worth it, me like trying to go in and do this like training session where I do my clamshells and I do my seated strict press and then I'm in pain for a week? I don't know, like, yes. I was like, no, because like I can't get out of bed, and when I'm crying in the middle of the night because I have to get up and go pee. Like I don't think that's worth it. And so it was really hard to, and it still is, to bridge that gap of like, I consider myself a decently elite athlete, and I look around me at all of these other athletes and non-athletes who are able to train all the way through their pregnancy and they're still hitting CrossFit workouts. And if they can do it, why can't I? Right? And getting to that point of understanding that is not right for you and your body right now, and you're just making your life more difficult to try and tick something off a list or check a box, is really not all that helpful. And so I think a lot of women go through that, whether it be with exercise or, any aspect, like parents who have children and mothers are pregnant for the second or the third time, and they feel like they're being an inadequate parent because they're not providing these amazing educational opportunities for their other children because they're, just having a rough go of it. I think we all kind of struggle with that in one way or another. And it's important to just be like, it's a brief moment in time. You can get through it. You can deal with whatever it is you feel you're not doing on the other side. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm terrified to go back to the gym. I'm so anxious about how bad I'm going to be, how weak I'm going to be, how much I'm going to lose, how much muscle mass I'm losing right now. But it's like, it's 9 more weeks, right?
And it's an interesting time that that you're going through this, because I feel like that parallels to a lot of other people who have just not been able to have access to the gym or any weights or anything like that over the past 3 months. And they're maybe feeling the same sense of anxiety going back into the gym. Like, okay, how much strength have I lost? Where am I going to be starting from ground zero? That sort of thing. So I think it's interesting, and maybe some other people who are not pregnant or never been pregnant will be able to kind of resonate with that as well.
Relate to that, yeah. And I mean, I think a big thing for that is like, okay, so control the things that you can control, right? One of those being diet. Now, that's another really interesting challenge, because you and I were talking before about like, well, how much are you tracking and what are you doing? And my diet has been far from perfect throughout my pregnancy. I've essentially, kind of set minimum targets for myself. Okay, this is what you need to like safely build a baby. So that's kind of like your baseline level of protein and your baseline level of carbs, and fats are never a problem for me. But and first trimester was a wash with the nausea. Second trimester, okay, yeah, could get back into it, but struggled with bad habits that I'd picked up in the first trimester. And now that we're in the third trimester, what I'm struggling with is appetite. So commonly, a lot of women experience increased reflux when they head into the third trimester. And another big thing is loss of appetite, just as all of your organs are getting squished and moved around. And depending on whether you're carrying high or low. I mean, in my case, I'm carrying super low, and like she's being fully engaged, head down in like ready to go for almost my whole pregnancy, which hasn't helped my pubic pain.
Right.
But if you're carrying quite high, then that's going to affect your diaphragm and your breathing and your stomach volume and all that stuff. So super common to have a loss of appetite as you just run out of room or start experiencing reflux in the third trimester. And that has been very real for me, and something that's been very strange because I'm an eater. And anybody who knows me knows that like never been a problem for me. So yeah, I've really struggled with that, because it kind of happened all at once for myself. And it was like, if I don't plan my days quite well, or at least be quite thoughtful about when I'm going to put my meals in there, then it's very easy for me to get to 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. and I've only had 800 calories or 1,000 calories.
Again, that's similar to what a lot of people have been struggling with over quarantine, is being really stressed and having a loss of appetite as well. And that's probably one of the first recommendations. Okay, look, let's set a timer. Let's set out a plan for when you're going to be eating, so to make sure you can stay on track. So 100%. I think that's interesting too.
And I think just like if you're, have been struggling in isolation and quarantine with that aspect, protein is always going to be the one item that like is really difficult to get in, simply because it needs to be spread out over the course of the day. And so while it's very easy for me to, at this point want to just have like pancakes in the morning or apples or something that like is really quite carb based, quite simple, ensuring that like I'm having a protein shake or that I'm having a real food protein source at every meal has gone a long way in kind of pushing me beyond my minimum expectation of my protein and closer to okay, this is ideally where I'd like to sit. This is what I'd like to have. But right. As long as I get over, 110 grams, I'm going to give myself a pass for the day.
Right.
Right. So that's been a tricky one, because you just don't always want to do it. But if you get to 7 or 8 p.m. and you've eaten a really insufficient amount, what ends up happening is you either don't eat more, because it's nothing worse when you've got a beach ball in your stomach than like trying to go to bed when you're full.
I was just going to ask, is that what
you are having reflux?
Is that what it feels like, just being really full?
It doesn't just feel like that. So it feels like you've got that like physical impediment there, right? You've got that beach ball, you're really full. But then also like at 31 weeks, like my daughter is a gymnast. She is rambunctious. And most people say that their babies move the most in the mornings and the evenings. And that's typically because mom tends to relax. So A, you're more aware of it. But B, being up and about during the day actually causes the baby to feel like they're rocking. And so it kind of lulls them to sleep a little bit. Whereas when you stop at night, it's like, oh, okay, we're up and about. And so, you know, with her rolling and spinning and doing all of that sort of stuff earlier on, it was like, yeah, you can feel, but now it feels like a snake inside you almost. And so when you're really full and you've got this beach ball, and now the beach ball is suddenly moving and kicking and rolling around and sticking limbs up into your stomach or your ribs or wherever they're going. If you've got a lot of food sitting there, it's not exactly the best feeling. I know the other night I was like trying to just have some like sliced apples before bed. And I specifically remember being like, I should have some nut butter with this. And I was like, no, I'm not going to have nut butter. It's going to be too much. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to eat these sliced apples. And I was like, oh, Ben, take them away from me. I was like, it's too much. And he's like, it's literally a slice and a half of apple. Just finish it.
Yeah.
I was like,
So unlike you.
I was like, I can't. I'm going to puke. And he's like, you had 3/4 of an apple for dinner.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that the risk of like pushing your food to later in the day and then under consuming for what you and what baby need to be healthy is very real. But also the other alternate risk there is that you under consume over the course of the day, and then you've got a little bit of appetite, and much like everyone else, you know, many of us like froth an evening snack, and it's like, oh well, maybe I'll have a little bit of ice cream, or maybe I'll have a little bit of this or that. And so it's like, okay, you're actually getting
fire.
Yeah, getting a decent caloric load in, but like your nutritional density is so low.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So yeah, I think for me it's been accepting that I've had to move to much smaller meals, which is super unusual for me, because if I do a big meal, that's like it, I'll only get one in for the day. And trying to push those earlier in my day so that if I'm feeling quite full in the evening, I can just be at peace with my intake.
And are you focusing more on like more calorically dense food items as well? Do you find that helps?
Definitely does help. Am I doing that? I wouldn't say necessarily. I did make some granola last week, but that was more for the MTMM page, and because I needed it's more being like needing snacks on the go that has been my problem. I think what I'm focusing on the most right now is veggies. It's very easy for me I'm very lazy with prep, and so I'll just grab what's close by. And if we're not prepared, then that, oh, there's raisin toast in the cupboard or whatever. So Ben has been awesome with prep. They've been doing like massive Sunday preps, and they've been doing huge containers of veggies and like shredded and fried Brussels sprouts and stuff like that. So I can just go into the fridge and grab like 200 grams of that. And that's kind of my meal with a little bit of chicken. Find that if I focus on that as opposed to calorically dense foods, I'm better off, because my concern is more getting that wide variety of veggies in.
Right. And so what are you expecting for the next 9 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks?
I'm currently have a chart of all the different whales by size, ranked by size. And so I'm monitoring my progression through that chart. I'll send it over to you. Great, you can put it in the show notes. But, no, I'm so big, and so it's really funny, because I think I'm at this stage right now where the end of my first trimester or second trimester was actually really awful, and a big part of that was my pelvic girdle pain was really bad. We were in the middle of a move. Work was super busy, life was super busy, COVID restrictions were being eased, and so there was a lot going on, and I was tired. I was so tired, way more tired than I thought I should have been. And to the point where I was like, okay, my iron's got to be low, or I have like pregnancy-induced hypothyroid, or like I have gestational diabetes, none of which checked out. So, but I was like, you're not supposed to be this tired at this point. Like that's not supposed to happen until late in the third, and that's what everyone says. So I was really confused. Now that I'm 3 weeks into my third trimester, this is like the best couple weeks of my pregnancy I've had. And so I'm hoping, my hope is that we kind of ride out this feeling for like, if we could ride it out for 5 more weeks, I'd be ecstatic. Before I start to get, you know, really into like the blue whale end of the spectrum.
And while we're on the subject of, you know, comparing yourself to a whale, I know that we have touched frequently on body image and everything like that. So have there been any changes over the past 10, 11 weeks in terms of how you're feeling there?
That's an interesting one. Like there definitely have been. I think that, and in speaking to other kind of athletes and high level CrossFitters who've gone through the same, they kind of said the same thing. They're like, it took me till about 25 or 28 weeks till I felt a bit more comfortable in my body, which I thought was really interesting because I was probably about 25 weeks at the time. And I was like, well, I'm definitely not feeling more comfortable. But I would say, yeah, right around 29 weeks, I've maybe settled into it a bit more. And I think part of that is like, I am very obviously pregnant now. What's been really interesting, actually, is I would say in the last week to 10 days, whenever I've been out shopping or doing things, you know, like I was at IKEA and I had to return something, and the guy who was kind of directing traffic was like, oh, did you want a chair? Or people are like, oh, do you want to hand it to the car? And like, I have not had a comment like that my entire pregnancy. And now it's like every time I go out, people are smiling at me more, offering to help me. We went to the vet and the vet asked like when I was due. I've only had one person ask me when I was due this entire pregnancy.
Well, I guess for the majority,
people do not ask that,
or a good chunk of the pregnancy was spent in quarantine.
Yeah, but we opened up here. Like we never shut down the way that you guys did in North America. So definitely I still had more interaction, but I would say in the last 10 days, it has been like, I'm very much more publicly pregnant, and in a way that has made me a bit more comfortable. I joke about like comparing myself to a whale, but it's also like, this is really it.
Right.
That being said, of course there's still things that I'm like, oh my God, I did not expect my butt to change like that, you know? And I'm like, that is a feature that I'm quite proud of. So I'm not a big fan of this change. But I'm also close enough to the end that I know that on the other side, I'm going to have the power and capacity to do things, to make myself feel better physically, which is going to make myself feel better mentally. Whereas right now, I just don't have as much of that ability. And I need to just sit back and recognize it's a point in time. And Ben needs to remind me it's a point in time very frequently. So yeah, it's still a struggle, but we're working through it. And I actually think the deeper we get into the pregnancy, the better my mindset is getting. But it still isn't where I expected it to be or where I would like it to be. You know, I'd love to be one of these women who loves pregnancy and loves their body and thinks the changes are amazing. I think that's such a great attitude and I love it. And I think that in, you know, my job and my role, it would be wonderful to have that positive outlook. But if I'm completely honest, like that's not how I feel. And it's important to recognize for a lot of women that that is not a personal failure if you don't feel that way either, but it is something that is like, let's try and move towards it, because beating yourself up is not going to do anyone any good. And I think too, there's the concern that like, it's not that I'm not thankful, you know, and it's not that I don't like love this baby and like, yes, the process is amazing and magical, but like, yeah, my reality of it is like, oh, it's not being the funnest.
Yeah.
Like I'll do it and I'll do it again, but I mean, easy to say now before we've gotten through the birth, right?
Yeah. And how do you have like, is there anything particular for your birth plan, or you just, yeah, I haven't even asked you guys about that.
So that's an interesting one. I mean, Okay, so with COVID, we've had almost no antenatal care. I saw a midwife at 15 weeks, and then I saw a midwife at 28 weeks. And Ben wasn't allowed to come to either of those appointments, so which was pretty disappointing. And literally all they did was check my blood pressure, check my blood work, give me an anti-D injection, and give me my vaccinations. They did a fetal heart listen, and they measured my uterus, but that was it. There was no discussion. They've never asked how much weight I've gained over the course of my pregnancy. There's never been any birth planning. There's never been any discussion of symptoms. I've struggled with low blood pressure throughout my pregnancy and being quite symptomatic with that. And there just be no discussion about anything. So it's really interesting. I expected at the 28-week visit that we'd start talking about birth plans a little bit, and nothing. And my next appointment isn't until 34 weeks. So it's like, it is imminently
Cutting
happening.
it close. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which is interesting. I mean, I guess for me, I feel, because of my background in nursing and the fact that I have delivered babies and I've done maternal and child health, I'm pretty comfortable with it. I know, and Ben and I have been doing Zoom classes online for perinatal care and postpartum care and labor and delivery. And we've done that as a couple, which has been nice. I think more so for him so that because he's super engaged and wants to be super informed and very active. So for him, it gives more of an idea of what to expect, whereas I kind of know what the potentials are. And because of my background in nursing, I'm very comfortable in a hospital setting. I'm very comfortable with the understanding that things don't go according to plan, and that I have a lot of faith that the options that are presented to you are what are best for you and your baby at that time. And I know there's a lot of distrust that other people have, oh, they're just pushing you towards a C-section so the doctor can go play golf, or, because it works better for their scheduling with who's on the L&D unit. And there might be some elements of that in there, but if they're telling you to go for a C-section because the L&D unit is blowing up and you're in a potentially unsafe scenario, that C-section is what's best for you and your baby, right? So yeah, I'm very comfortable going in without a birth plan. I do have some preferences. My preference would be, if I'm coping well, I'd like to delay an epidural as long as possible, just so that I have the ability to move around and labor in different positions. That being said, if I get to the hospital and I'm sign me up, I have no qualms about that. I have no problems either way. I'd prefer a natural delivery, although if I'm honest, the closer we get to it, the more appealing a C-section sounds. But likewise, if there's any reason at all that moving to the operating room is going to be a safer or better option, then I have no qualms about that. So yeah, I mean, I have my preferences, but I'm ready to just kind of roll with it, and whatever happens, and kind of make decisions in the moment. I feel pretty informed. I totally understand why other women might not feel that way. And I think that I don't want to say lack of care, that's a strong term, but the decreased care with COVID, I think that's a huge issue for women who don't maybe come from the exact place of privilege that I'm in. I think that's huge risk factor, and that really does concern me for not just women from minorities or different groups, or with language barriers or things like that, but even women who come from kind of the same place as myself but don't have a background in nursing, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge issue. So it's been interesting times. My hope is that at that 34-week appointment, Ben will at least be able to come in with me.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think that he'll be able to be in the He'll be able to be in the delivery room though, right?
Yeah, unless like something dramatically changes. The policy right now in Australia and in Victoria specifically is that you can have one support person in the delivery room. So typically you would have two. You would have your support person, and then your support person would have a support person.
Which Ben is definitely going to need.
Yeah, he had his support person all lined up. They were ready to go. But yeah, so now it's just the one, and they are not, there's no visitors in hospital after. So if you're in hospital for a couple of days, it means like Ben's mom and his sister can't come in and meet the baby or anything like that. I guess my only other like big concern around that is they are pushing to get people out of hospital sooner than normal. But my hope is that I remain in hospital long enough that Ben or someone else can take like a muslin or something the baby's been wrapped in and bring it home to our dog.
Right.
Because she is a unique character and is going to need some adjusting.
Yeah. Just because of how attached she is to you at this point too, that's going to be a struggle.
It's funny. We had friends over like a week ago who have a 4-month-old, 5-month-old. And Zep has not really seen a lot of babies. She's very indifferent to kids in general. But the baby and the dog just sat there and stared at each other for like an hour and a half. And then she went over to, where the baby was getting changed, and then kind of like was horking a little bit like she was going to throw up after, which our dog she's anxious, so she throws up all the time, and didn't really think anything of it. And then after they left, she went over to the baby, where the baby was sitting on the couch, and sniffed around the couch a fair bit, and then immediately vomited.
Oh no.
It's like, oh my God, that's not a good sign.
Well, that's going to be a struggle for you guys.
Yeah, and like this, this is like one of these, it's a 4 or 5-month-old baby. It smells amazing, right? Like but it's like that, to them, that's such a different, that's like not a human smell, but it's not an animal smell. So it's very confusing.
What is this?
So
that'll be interesting.
That's a completely off topic, non-nutrition. But yeah, so
it's all about the experience.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that I'll be in hospital long enough that we can adjust the dog a little bit, and then just kind of see where it goes, really. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm in the phase right now where the end is in sight, and so that's awesome and exciting, and I'm excited for the next phase for myself and the baby and for Ben. But I haven't hit the point where I'm terrified yet. Like it's not so close that it's terrifying.
It's just so close that you can start really making the most of this time that you have, because you're starting to realize that it is limited. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Which like maybe means set up the baby's room at some point.
Well, it'll get done.
Yeah, eventually. I mean, we have a bassinet set up, so she's fine. She'll be ready.
Yeah, she'll be fine. Oh, it's so exciting. And I guess hopefully we'll be able to catch up one more time before you do go into labor, because I feel like it'd be really difficult to tie you down afterwards. Try and sit down for a chat.
Yeah, and from everything that I have, a couple clients who are kind of in that 38 to 40 week range right now, and it's been really interesting seeing their experience, and it's very different than my experience at 31 weeks. So it'll be interesting to kind of catch up and sit down and see what's changed or hasn't, and move forward. But exciting time.
Super exciting. And then I can't wait to meet a little baby girl.
Yeah, well, you got to figure out an exemption to travel into the country, don't you?
Let's not make that public knowledge. I have valid reasons.
Yeah.
Essential travel.
Bubsy exemption, please.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing this with all of us. I'm sure that it's been very insightful and helpful for a lot of people going through similar situations. But like I said, we'll probably only have one more chat with Kat before there'll be a screaming baby in the background. So if you do have any questions about what's to come or what she's been through or anything just generally pregnancy related, feel free to reach out, comment, anything like that, and we'll be able to touch on that in our next
especially anything that's
final chat.
Pregnancy related to you that we haven't covered, because my experience is just one experience, right? So
exactly.
I'd be curious to know what else people are going through.
Or even if they're not questions, even if they're just like, oh, well, you went through this, I also went through this, or I never experienced that, or something similar, something different. I'm interested in learning about it anyway, so please share.
Awesome.
Okay, well, we'll catch you in the next one, and yeah, thanks again.
Absolutely, my pleasure.